I wasn't supposed to be there. In fact, I wasn't even supposed to know the wedding was happening. But word gets around, especially when you're the kind of person people like to whisper about. My name is Jess, and I'm the sister no one talks about at family dinners, the one who chose a different path, or so they say. The truth, I chose myself, and they never forgave me for it. It was a friend of a friend who slipped me the details, the date, the church, the time. My sister Emily was getting married, and somehow her only sibling hadn't made the guest list. No text, no call, not even a passive-aggressive holiday card, just silence. At first, I laughed it off. Classic Emily. She was always better at playing the family game than I was. Sweeter, softer, more willing to bend. I wasn't surprised she'd rather pretend I didn't exist than risk me showing up and ruining her perfect image. And I almost stayed away. Almost. But then, 2 days before the wedding, I got a message. An unknown number. One sentence. You don't know me, but I need to talk to you about David. David, as in David Barnes. The groom. I don't know what made me reply. Maybe curiosity. Maybe instinct. All I know is, an hour later, I was sitting across from a woman with shaking hands and eyes that had clearly known love and betrayal. Her name was Angela, and the story she told me changed everything. Angela's hands trembled as she clutched the coffee cup, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know where else to go. When I saw the wedding photos online, I panicked. We sat at a quiet cafe on the east side of town, far from the buzz of wedding planners and champagne flutes. Angela looked nothing like the drama she carried. She was calm, elegant, haunted. Her eyes darted toward the window every few seconds, like she wasn't sure if she should be talking to me at all. I was with him, she continued, her voice cracking. David, for almost 2 years. We were planning to move in together. He even proposed, talked about rings, kids, cities we'd live in. And then one day, he just stopped answering my calls. My stomach tightened. I didn't want to believe her. Not because I trusted David, I didn't know the guy, but because I knew what this would mean for Emily. She loved hard, blindly. She always had. Angela reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate ring with a pale sapphire, barely worn. He gave me this, she said, 6 months before he vanished. Then she showed me the texts, hundreds of them. Sweet, familiar, intimate. One message caught my eye. I can't wait for you to meet my family. You'll love Jess. She's the only one who actually questions things. My name. In his messages, I blinked. You knew about me, I asked. Angela nodded. He used to talk about your family all the time. Said they were intense, controlling. He admired how you walked away from all of it. He made it sound like you were some kind of legend. That was the moment it clicked. David hadn't ghosted Angela because the relationship faded. He'd walked out because he was already working his way into another one, into Emily's life. And no one, not Emily, not my parents, not even the wedding guests had any clue. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. You're telling me the man my sister's marrying this weekend just disappeared from your life without explanation, and now he's playing fiancé like nothing happened? Angela nodded, eyes glassy but steady. I don't want to ruin her wedding. That's not why I came. I thought she deserved to know. I stared at her, then at the ring, then back at her. You're not ruining a wedding, I said quietly. You might be saving her from a lifetime of lies. And in that moment, a decision formed inside me, one I never thought I'd make. I would go to the wedding, not to start drama, not to be seen, but to stand beside the woman David never thought would show her face again, and make sure Emily knew exactly who she was about to marry. The chapel was dressed like a dream. White peonies spilled over crystal vases, and satin ribbons fluttered softly in the spring breeze. It was the kind of ceremony Emily had always imagined elegant, polished, picture perfect. I stood outside for a moment, watching guests filter in through arched doors under a string quartet's gentle hum. No one noticed me. Not yet. Angela stepped out of the car beside me, her hands clenched into nervous fists at her sides. She wore a simple navy dress and a neutral expression, but I could feel the tension radiating off her. "You sure about this?" I asked. She gave a single nod. She deserves the truth. We moved together toward the entrance, drawing a few curious stares as we approached. I could hear murmurs someone recognized me. "Isn't that Jess? Did she get invited after all? Did Emily patch things up?" The answer was no. There was no invitation, no reconciliation. I was still the sister no one talked about, just now I had company. Inside, the pews were filling fast. Friends of the groom, extended family, business acquaintances, old neighbors. The groom's party was already at the altar, and there, in the middle of them all, stood David Barnes. Looking the part, perfect tux, confident smile, one hand adjusting his cufflink, the other gesturing as he chatted with the officiant. Then he saw me, or rather he saw her. His entire body stiffened like someone had pressed pause. His face went blank, his mouth parted slightly. I could almost hear the panic behind his eyes. Angela didn't flinch. She stood tall, just a few steps behind me. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just walked down the aisle, slowly, purposefully, letting every step echo louder than the music. I took a seat halfway up, close enough for Emily to see me when she walked in, close enough for David to sweat. He turned away sharply, whispering something to one of his groomsmen. The color had drained from his face. One of the bridesmaids, probably Emily's college friend, gave me a questioning glance. I ignored it. Angela sat beside me, staring straight ahead, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The music shifted. The crowd stood. Here came the bride. And David. He was already unraveling. The chapel doors swung open, and there she was, Emily, glowing in a soft ivory gown, veil trailing behind her like morning mist. Her smile was radiant, the kind only someone in love or convinced they were could wear. Our father stood beside her, proud and polished, guiding her down the aisle. The guests turned to admire the bride. The music swelled. Cameras rose. But I watched only one person, David. He was still pale, still rattled. As Emily drew closer, his eyes darted from her to me, then to Angela, and back again. His hands trembled slightly, barely noticeable unless you knew where to look. Emily was halfway down the aisle when she saw me. Her smile faltered for just a second, her brows twitching in confusion. Then she noticed Angela beside me, and that's when the warmth in her expression flickered just a small, stunned hitch in her breath. But she kept walking. I stood as she passed, the way any sister would, and for the first time in years, she looked me dead in the eye. We didn't smile, we didn't nod. We simply saw each other at the altar. David was frozen in place. The officiant gave him a nudge. He blinked, forcing a weak smile as he reached for Emily's hands. She turned toward him, eyes still searching. The ceremony began, but the air had shifted. What once felt like a celebration now trembled with something unsaid, something sharp. Angela sat still, but I saw her fingers trembling in her lap. She was trying to hold it together for Emily's sake. I leaned slightly toward her and whispered, "We wait. She needs to see it herself." The vows started. David stumbled over a line. Emily furrowed her brow. The officiant tried to move it along, but the tension was obvious now. Guests shifted. Whispers rose. David kept glancing toward our pew. Not subtly, not calmly. It wasn't nerves. It was fear. Finally. Emily leaned closer to him and whispered something. I couldn't hear it, but I saw his answer. He shook his head. She looked past him, at Angela, and the ceremony stopped. I'm sorry, Emily said aloud, her voice shaking. Can we pause for a moment? Gasps. Silence. David stepped forward. And what are you doing? She ignored him and turned to us. Jess, what's going on? And just like that, the dam cracked. Angela rose to her feet slowly, voice steady but full of heartbreak. You don't know me, Emily, but I knew David long before you did. Angela's voice barely rose above a whisper, but it carried through the chapel like a thunderclap. Every breath in the room hitched. Every eye turned to her. I knew David for 2 years. She began. We lived together for part of that. He talked about our future constantly. We were even looking at rings. She paused, swallowing hard, and then one day, he just disappeared. No goodbye, no explanation. He ghosted me like I didn't exist. I searched for him until I saw his engagement photos online with you. Emily stood frozen, bouquet limp at her side. That can't be true. David stepped forward quickly, raising a hand like he could wave it all away. She's lying. I barely knew her. She's just some woman I met years ago. Angela reached into her small clutch and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a printed photo, her and David, smiling at a holiday party, arms around each other. She handed it to the officiant, who glanced down, then looked sharply at David. I have more, Angela said softly. Messages, voicemails, bank statements. We shared an apartment. He left the lease in both our names. Emily's lips parted, but no sound came out. She turned to David. Is any of this true? David's mouth opened, closed, opened again. She's obsessed. She's been stalking me. This is exactly why I didn't tell you. She's unstable. Really, I said, standing up now, because I met her 2 days ago. She's not unstable, she's honest, which is more than I can say for you. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. A video played on the screen, David's voice, clear and warm, saying, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Angela. No one else feels like home. Emily watched the screen like it was a nightmare. A part of her still didn't want to believe it. I could see the denial flickering, fighting to hold on. Angela, meanwhile, stood like a ghost reliving her own death. You wore this, she said, her voice trembling now, pointing at Emily's necklace. That's mine. David gave it to me for our first anniversary. Emily reached for the pendant. Her fingers stopped midair. She looked at David. Tell me this isn't true, she whispered. Tell me you didn't recycle your past and lie to me with every word. David finally snapped. Fine. You want the truth? She meant nothing. I moved on. I found someone better. She couldn't handle it. There it was. The cruelty. The contempt. The version of him only some people had seen, and now everyone had. A murmur rolled through the guests. Someone gasped. A woman stood up and left. Emily's bouquet hit the floor with a soft thud. I think we're done here, she said, her voice hollow. The officiant closed his book quietly. David tried to grab her hand, but she pulled away like his touch burned her. I can't believe I was going to marry you. You don't mean this. She's ruining everything. No, I said calmly. She's saving her from you. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the soft hum of air conditioning and the shuffling of stunned guests. Emily stood in the center of it all, veil slipping from her hair, mascara smudged by shock and humiliation. She looked smaller now, not because she was weak, but because something had shattered inside her. David tried again, stepping forward, voice desperate. Emily, come on, you can't let them ruin this. We've planned this for months. Emily didn't even look at him. "You ruined this," she said, her voice barely more than a breath. "You ruined me." Their mother, ever the master of public appearance, rushed forward, grabbing Emily's arm. "Sweetheart, don't make a scene. Let's step outside, collect ourselves." Emily pulled away. "This is the scene. Mom, this is the truth. Or would you rather I smile through betrayal like you always did?" That landed like a slap. Even Mom backed away. Angela remained standing near the pew, silent now, like her purpose was fulfilled. She didn't look triumphant, just relieved and heartbroken. David looked around the chapel, perhaps hoping someone would come to his defense. No one did. Friends avoided his eyes. His groomsmen awkwardly stepped away. A child started crying somewhere near the back. Then Emily turned to me. Her eyes met mine, red, exhausted but clear. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I know, but I'm glad you did." She bent to pick up her bouquet, held it for a moment, then handed it to a nearby usher, like it was just a piece of costume. "To everyone here," Emily said, her voice gaining strength. "Thank you for coming. There will be no wedding today, but the food and wine are still excellent, and the band's already paid, so enjoy yourselves." Gasps, laughter, awkward applause. A few clinks of champagne glasses from people who clearly didn't know how to react. David stood alone at the altar, abandoned. Emily walked down the aisle again, this time in reverse, her steps lighter than before. She stopped in front of Angela. "Thank you," she said, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry he hurt you." Angela nodded, voice breaking. "I'm sorry you had to find out like this." Then Emily turned to me once more, and without a word, pulled me into a tight hug. Years of silence, rivalry, and assumptions melted in that moment. Maybe we weren't sisters who understood each other, but today, we'd stood for one another, and that mattered. As she stepped outside into the sunlight, her veil trailing behind like smoke, I knew one thing for sure: she'd be okay. The reception hall was never used. The caterers boxed up food in silence. The band packed their instruments, unsure whether to mourn the event or celebrate its collapse. But in the days that followed, something shifted in Emily, in me, in our family. She stayed with me that first night. No bridesmaids, no luxury suite, just the two of us, on my couch, barefoot and silent, sharing a pint of ice cream in the dark. Neither of us said much, but sometimes the absence of judgment is enough. By morning, she deleted every photo of her and David off social media, blocked his number, gave the ring back to his assistant in a sealed envelope with no note inside. The tabloids caught wind of what happened, of course. A canceled wedding between a tech consultant and a prominent attorney always made good gossip. But Emily didn't care. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the need to perform. A week later, she booked a one-way flight to Lisbon. "I need air," she said simply. Standing in my kitchen with a suitcase and coffee she barely touched, I nodded. "You'll find it. And when you're ready to come back, I'll be here." We hugged again. This time, it wasn't just out of survival, it was out of respect. As for Angela, she quietly returned to Chicago. Before she left, she texted me, "Thank you for believing me." "That meant more than you know," I responded. "Thank you for speaking up. That took more courage than I think even you realize." David, from what I gathered, tried to spin the narrative, claimed Angela was a jealous ex, said Emily had cold feet, tried to salvage his reputation, but it didn't stick. The firm he worked for opened an internal review after someone sent them screenshots. Not me. I didn't need to. The truth had its own momentum now, and something remarkable happened in the fallout. People started seeing me differently. The cousin who once called me a black sheep now asked to meet for lunch. My aunt mailed me a handwritten letter: "I misjudged you. I'm sorry." Even Mom, rigid, image-obsessed, and rarely warm, sent a short message one evening: "You did what none of us could." You protected your sister. I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever, but I read it twice. That quiet strength people once called defiance, it had finally found its place. A few weeks later, I found myself walking through the old neighborhood park where Emily and I used to play as kids. The swing still creaked, the oak tree still leaned the same way in the wind. Everything felt smaller now, not because the world had shrunk, but because I'd grown. I sat on the same bench where we once planned out imaginary weddings, using flowers for rings and pebbles for guests. Back then, we thought happily ever after just happened. We didn't know it had to be built and sometimes burned down first. I thought about everything that had led me here. The years of being the outcast, the whispered judgments at family gatherings, the way people lowered their voices when they said my name, like I was a wound too embarrassing to mention. I used to wonder if they were right, if walking away from what didn't feel right made me selfish. Turns out it made me strong. Because when it really mattered, when my sister stood at the edge of a life built on lies, I was the one who stood beside her. Not because I wanted credit, not because I wanted to say I told you so, but because sometimes love doesn't look like approval or applause. Sometimes it looks like showing up, even when you're uninvited. If you're listening to this, and you've ever felt like the one left out, the one dismissed, doubted, or disrespected, I want you to know something. You don't have to be welcomed to make an impact. You don't need permission to protect someone. You don't have to be part of the picture to change how the story ends. Because in the end, truth has a way of rising, and when it does, those who tried to bury it can't look away. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the afterthought. I was the sister who showed up when it counted. And if that makes me the black sheep, then I'll wear that title with pride.